Good afternoon and welcome to another session of Build Your AutoCAD IQ. Today we'll be talking about Beyond the Basics, continuing our series with External References Part 2. Your presenter today will be Martin Stewart. I'm Victoria Studley. I'll be moderating, and we're also joined again by Naman Misarawala, one of our expert elites. Martin is one of our technical support specialists on the AutoCAD team out of Lake Oswego, Oregon. I am also a technical support specialist out of Manchester, New Hampshire, and Naman is based in Westchester, Cincinnati. So before we get started, let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping here, as we usually do. Feel free to leave your questions in the chat window. We'll answer them as time allows. This session will be recorded and later posted to YouTube, so if you miss something, you need to leave, you can't hear us, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel for previous recordings. The links will be made available for your registration reminder, post-webinar survey. Again, throw those questions in the chat window for us, and we'll try to answer them live for you. If we can't, feel free to contact us after the webinar. Okay, so this is the Autodesk Help webinar series. Some of your previous AutoCAD IQ webinars have been what's new in AutoCAD LT, what's new in AutoCAD, Beyond the Basics, the look of line types, a couple of third dimension 3D modeling and rendering introduction webinars. We've also continued the Beyond the Basics series with working with constraints in AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. And then we also took a look at AutoCAD on the Mac. You can check all of these out on the YouTube channel. The link is right there in the PowerPoint. So all of these files will be made available to you after the webinar on our Box account. So go ahead and download those and you'll be able to find the links there as well. Our Autodesk Knowledge Network featured articles for the week are, let's see, we've got our traditional getting started, learn and explore, and troubleshooting links in the slideshow here. New this week is the Hotfix 1 for AutoCAD LT and Hotfix 1 for regular AutoCAD that were released, and they address a couple of graphics issues and some plotting problems, and then the one for full AutoCAD also addresses an issue with the publish command. So go ahead and download that if you haven't and install it. If you're experiencing any kind of graphics or plotting issues, it might take care of it for you. So let's get down to it. Today, Martin will be helping you with a quick review of XREF basics from the first part of this series. And then he'll jump into some small and large team strategies for XREF management, and then small and large projects, how to manage those. And at the end, of course, we'll add some additional tips and then take your questions and have a nice question and answer session if time allows. And without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Martin, and he's going to talk all about XREFs.
Thanks, Victoria. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to present these these demonstrations to you, but Victoria, do we have some polls that we could start with?
Oh, we do. I did miss the polls. Awkward moment. Okay, let's start with, is this your first AutoCAD Help webinar? So tell us, is this the first time you've joined us, or are you coming back for more? We'll leave this open for about 30 seconds so everybody has a chance to answer. And it's looking like most of you have been with us before.
Are we able to see the results?
Yep, I'll share it out here in a second. There we go. So is this your first
Awesome.
Autodesk Help webinar? 10% yes and 90% no. So thank you for all of you who have joined us again, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. All right, I'll go ahead and run the second poll. We'd like to know, which AutoCAD-based application do you use? AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT, AutoCAD Architecture, MEP, Electrical, Mechanical, or Plant, or one of our infrastructure products, Civil 3D or MAP, or are you using something completely different? Leave that open for a few more seconds. And once I close it, I'll show you the results. It's looking like a tight race between AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. Let's close that out now, and I'll show you the results. Looks like 40% AutoCAD, followed by LT, and then some of our vertical AutoCAD products, and then infrastructure. And a few of you are using something completely different. All right. Third one here, how many people typically work with you on an AutoCAD project? Is it just you? You're a one-person show? Is it 2 to 4, 5 to 10, or do you work in a larger firm, 11 or more people? Okay, let's close this one out. And I'll share those results with you. Looks like a lot of single, oh, can you still see the screen there, Martin? Can you still see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so it looks like a lot of single shops out there. I'm going to hide that. I'll run the next poll here. How familiar are you with external references in AutoCAD? Are you brand new to XREFs? Are you a little bit familiar? Are you an XREF Pro? Or forget about it? You say that much better than I do, Martin. I know you have a...
You did very well.
Oh, did I? Okay. You've got the right accent. All right, I'll go ahead and close that one out and share it with you. Looks like most people are right up the middle, somewhat familiar, not brand new, but not total pros either. So hopefully we can teach you all something great about XREFs today. Okay, do I have one more? I think I do. Okay, last poll, and then we'll jump right into the XREF webinar here. Typical size of your AutoCAD projects. Do you work on small, medium, or large projects, or do you do a mix of a mix of all of them? Okay, it's looking like a lot of small projects, small to medium. And then almost half of you out there are using AutoCAD for a little bit of both. About 46% using everything. All right, Martin, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Victoria.
You're welcome.
So the vast majority are either one-person shows or in a small office, and also primarily work on small to medium projects. However, you'll probably need to interface with other offices and locations. I need to see if I can get the AutoCAD on the screen. We're still showing the poll results. Do you need to turn that over to me, Victoria? There we go. So now we see the data set, the reference file from the first X-reference session, and that link is provided in the PowerPoint, and you can review a lot of information on the external reference basics in that excellent webinar that Volker did last year about October with Christina Davis. So a lot of you in the audience, if not all of you, probably wear many hats, and you're mostly AutoCAD users or AutoCAD LT users, but you're probably all CAD managers to some extent. You have to manage your own CAD decisions and CAD setup, and when you work with another outside team or have to send your drawings out, you have to manage that as well. So in this presentation today, after we do a quick review of external reference basics, we're going to jump more into the implementation of it and move from basic to more complex. And after each demonstration, I'll pause and see if anyone has some questions or comments specific to that topic or that demonstration. And then we'll hopefully allow a good 5 or 10 minutes at the end of this webinar for Q&A session. So going back to that original webinar on getting started with X-references, this sample file was presented and discussed at length, and I just want to do a quick review here. So to bring up the X-reference palette, there's a couple ways to get to it. You can go to your Insert tab here, and here's the reference panel, and then this small arrow here, you just click that, and that brings up the panel. So this X-reference palette shows that we're in this drawing and we have this one X-reference. Notice these vertical lines here. This is very similar to Microsoft Excel where you just double click it and it'll resize that column for you rather quickly to see everything. We have an interior design X-reference that's an overlay. If I minimize this palette and click in here, it activates the external reference ribbon as well. I can get into that drawing directly by opening the reference here, and so now we're in that drawing. Notice that I still see the floor plan. I'm going to check out the X references. I can also type in XREF, and so I have the floor plan referenced into the interior design plan. So you can reference back and forth to see both drawings. Let's go back to the floor plan sample. Another thing to be aware of, going back to the X-reference palette, is you also have options to edit reference in place, open the reference, which we just did. You can clip the reference, and you can get back into your palette directly through here. One thing we want to mention is when you have an X reference in a drawing, you can certainly snap to it. So if I drew a line, you can grab the X reference and snap to it. That's pretty straightforward. But also you have an option to fade those X references. So some may have a visual preference to have those external references dimmer or brighter. So you get to that through the options. So you can type in options at your command prompt or go through the application button here and select options. Then go to the display tab, and here's the fade control for external referencing. So with this bar, you can crank up the display. So over here to the side, you can look at the furniture as I apply it, and it's not much brighter than it was. Let me go all the way the other direction and apply it. Oh, and I guess I have to hit OK for it to take. So then you see it gets super faded in this example. Let's bring options back up, go the opposite extreme, and that's as bright as it gets. So I tend to like to have them slightly faded just as a quick visual reminder that which elements are external references. Another thing we'll review as a quick reference going back to the palette. When you right-click an external reference in this palette, you get the options here to unload, reload, detach. We'll discuss bind later, but let's just review unload for a moment. What unload does is it does exactly what its name implies. It unloads the X reference, but it's still there. So to bring it back quickly, you can right-click on the X reference and reload. You don't want to get that confused with detach. Detach completely removes it. So the next basic we want to talk about is the difference between overlay and attach as far as the X reference type. So notice right now the interior design is overlaid in the floor plan sample. Let's say I want to start a new drawing. I'm going to go and open a recent drawing I created called basement. So we're going to start a basement plan here. I want to X reference in the first floor plan just as a reference. So I typed in X reference to bring that palette up. I'm going to go grab that first floor plan. I'm going to select, this can be an attachment, and I know it's aligned with the same 0, 0 insertion point, so I'll just let it insert at 0, 0. So there's the first floor as my reference, but I'm not seeing the interiors. So the reason for that is what we were discussing. Back in the floor plan, the interior design is inserted as an overlay type. So that means that it won't carry through when you X reference that drawing into another drawing. So I don't see the interiors. So I can change that back in this drawing. I'm back in the floor plan sample. XREF, I can highlight that and I can change the X reference type to attach. This is going to demonstrate a couple things. I'm going to save that, go back to my basement plan, and reload. So when I reload the drawing with the interior attached, it should be coming in. Let me find out what's going on. I'm going to go back to the floor plan. Interior design is attached. Save. I'm going to just go ahead and close and reopen. See if that makes a difference. Yep, I'm having a technical malfunction there, so I'm going to just keep moving. This one has that X reference as well. I can refresh it. It is notifying me it needs reloading. So that's been reloaded as well. So just the point of this review is the difference between attach and overlay. When you attach an overlay, that continues on into other drawings. If you just overlay it, then it stays with this drawing and doesn't carry through. Any questions on this basic review at this point? Victoria?
I think we're okay to keep going. I think we're okay to keep going, Martin.
Okay, great. Thanks. So as far as why you'd want to use X references, one benefit is keeping the file size down. And as you know, as an AutoCAD user, only one person can be in a drawing at a time. So by breaking it up into several drawings that can be X referenced into each other, it allows multiple people to work on the project. And then there's the reuse of some elements, like a structural grid would be referred into several drawings. The same grid, the same drawing. So there's a built-in efficiency there. And then we'll also see some demonstrations of using X references as a background. Perhaps you want to work on a second floor of a building and see the first floor in the background. And then, of course, another benefit is if someone else is working in these drawings at the same time and saves the changes, you'll get an automatic notification that X references need to be updated. So with that quick review and a basic understanding of how X references work, then we can start thinking about how to use them strategically in your business to help out your workflow to do things more efficiently. We're in AutoCAD LT here, and so all of these examples are flat 2D drawing examples, but the same principles really apply to 3D drawings. So I'm going to move into a demonstration about title blocks and another tip on how to use X-referencing for engineering and architectural stamps. So I'm going to open up a different drawing here. So this is a similar drawing to what we were just looking at from the first webinar. And in this floor plan, notice I have a layout tab already created with a viewport. So I can X-reference in, or I could insert. I have the option to insert a title block as the block, or I can X-reference it in. So I'm bringing up my X-reference palette again, and I already have it loaded. We talked about the difference between loading and detaching. So it's still here. I'm going to just go ahead and reload it. And so here's a sample title block that could be X-referenced into different layout sheets. But what some people may not realize is you can do a similar thing with your architect or engineer stamp. I'm going to reload that. And so that places the stamp as an external reference too. So the advantage of that is a lot of engineers and architects don't necessarily want their licensed stamp to go out when you send the drawings to a vendor or a subcontractor or something. By having it as an X reference, it's there for plotting and for PDFs, but when you send out the actual drawing, you could just omit that stamp and send out the drawings without it. Also in this drawing set, I'd like to show an example of how X references could be used to your advantage for image files. Image files are just another type of external reference. So let's go back to the Insert tab. And there's a couple ways to get to it. You could do it directly from the X reference palette that we've been working with. But also here in the reference panel, you can simply go to Attach. And I've got a couple images here ready to go. Let's say I want to go ahead and illustrate the chair that is going to be used typically in the project. So I picked out this awesome chair. I'm going to specify on the screen where I want to insert it. And I've got a place picked out right here. And notice that I can visually scale the image, and it gives me an outline so I can eyeball it. So that's an external reference as well, that image file. And then that is available for printing, plotting, and becoming part of the contract document. Let's try that again. I'll go about it a different way here. Let's go to External Reference Palette. I'm doing that by clicking this arrow here in the reference panel. And I can go to Attach. And then this shows me the options I have for attaching. So the primary one is DWG, but I can also attach DWFs, DGNs, and PDFs, or image files, which is what I'm working with now. And then I get that same window to go select it. So I want to put in an example of the standard desktop that's going to be used on this project. And I'll go ahead and put it on the screen. It's quite large, so I want to scale it. So there is my standard state-of-the-art computer for this project illustrated in this drawing. So using images simply for part of the construction documents is a good way to use external referencing. Let's jump to a different example. I'm going to show another way to use images for your advantage. Especially, this might apply to small businesses even more so. Let's open up another drawing I have here. I'm going to go to a drawing called Trace Example. So sometimes you might have a job where you're doing a remodel on an existing building, and all you have to go by are scanned images or old blueprints to get started. And so you have to perhaps start with an as-built drawing, and all you've got is some old blueprint. So I'm going to insert an image here. I'll go ahead and go to my Insert tab, Attach, and I'm going to grab this blueprint scan. I'm going to specify on the screen where I want it and scale it up randomly, and there we go. So one thing I should point out is you can also specify a layer to specifically place your X reference in. So in this case, I intentionally put it on a layer called Scan, and I'll show you the advantage of doing that here in a moment. So I have this scan, but it's not exactly what I need. I want to trace over this, start an as-built drawing, but I sure don't want to work at this angle. So just quickly, what you can do with these image files that come in cockeyed or at the wrong scale is you can adjust external references very easily with just a few simple commands. So I want to rotate this. So I can just select the image, and I hit return, and I have to specify a base point. So how do I get this straight quickly? I'm going to pick this corner, and then the trick is to select reference. So I'm going to hit R, and then you pick the reference start point again. I'm going to pick that corner again. I'll scroll out and pick this corner, and now it's wanting me to rotate. And since I have my ortho on, I can rotate it straight. And I think I made the mistake of having the ortho on when I picked that second point. So let me redo that real quick. Rotate, select the X reference image. I'm going to pick that corner as the starting point. Reference, same starting point. I've got ortho off now, so this should work this time. This is my other point. And then now by turning ortho on, it'll snap into place for me. So now I've got the image straight. In fact, I want to double check that. I'm going to switch over to my other layer and draw a straight line with ortho on, just to visually confirm that that line is what I want. So that's perfectly straight. So I'm ready to go or not? Let's check something. I know this image, this building is 50 feet across. So I'll use my distance command. I'm going to snap here and snap here, and it's a little too big. It's almost 100 feet. So I'm going to quickly scale that, and here's another quick way to do that. I'm going to draw a line starting right here, and then send that out at 50 feet. So if I list that line is exactly 50 feet. So now I can scale my X reference image against that line with a very similar method that we just used for rotation. Same basic workflow. I hit Scale command, select the X reference image, select my start point. I want to use a reference scale, so I have to hit R, select that same start point again, and now the second point is what I want to scale, so it's going to be right here, and then the reference point is the end of that reference line. So now I got my image straightened out and to scale. I'll go ahead and hit that, erase that line. So now I'm ready to draft, but maybe a few more things would help me out. If I go to Layer Properties again, I know I put that image on this scan layer. I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer. So by locking that layer, I won't accidentally erase it or move it or rescale it. All it'll let me do is select it, and I could open that external reference from here. But if I type in the move command, it shouldn't let me move it. So that's just a helpful tip too. By locking that, then you won't accidentally move it or erase it while you're starting to trace over it. So then you can go to a different layer and start your archive drawing. Similar to the external reference fading that we showed in the options, you also have this layer property. So in the Home tab, Layers, you have Locked Layer Fading. So you could also fade lock layers here. That seems to not have much of an effect on images, but if that was a locked X reference DWG, it would fade similar to the X reference fading in options. So just another tip on how to use X reference images. They can be part of the construction drawing, or you can use them for backgrounds in tracing. So I'll pause there for just a minute, and if anyone has a question on what we've covered so far, please throw it in the chat window.
Hey, Martin. I think we're pretty much caught up. Are you, do you have more to keep going with? We can save the questions for the end if you'd like.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh,
So back in this, what was that, Victoria?
no, go ahead. We'll save it for the end, okay?
Okay, so back in this drawing, we're going to explain a little bit, discuss a little bit how to break out the drawing into more useful X references. So in this case, we just see the basic walls and architecture of this drawing, but we could do the structural grid separately. So I'm going to bring in a structural grid that I have as a separate drawing. I still am showing images as my file. So I'm going to cancel that and change it right here to attach a DWG. So it'll list my drawings. And then I'm going to bring in the grid. So this is very, very common use of external referencing, is bringing in a structural grid so that other users can use the same exact grid for different floors, different parts of the project. Another thing that you'll notice is very important and valuable to do on these kind of X-reference strategies is to use a common insertion point. I'm going to bring in another X-reference. I'll bring in some partitions. So I have first floor partitions, and when I select that, you'll see that I have the option to select different coordinates to insert it. So you could use any insertion point you want, but it's not difficult to see how it helps you to have everything at a common 0, 0 insertion point. It makes it much easier to manage, and so I've organized these drawings so that I know everything lines up when it's at 0, 0. So I'm pulling this in as an attachment as well. So now I see the partitions broken out. So perhaps there's one designer that's focused on getting the partitions designed. Maybe a vendor is supplying you a drawing on the partitions, and that's going to be separate in this example from, say, the furniture. So I'm going to grab the first floor furniture. I'm just going to go ahead and use 0, 0 because I've got all that organized. And now I see the furniture. because I set my X reference fading option to slightly darker, it's kind of evident what's an X reference because it's somewhat muted, it's a little darker versus the actual drawing geometry that's in this drawing. So from the first example that we started out with, it was just one X reference, the interiors versus the exterior. This has been broken up into 4 different external references. This is where locked layers fading could be useful too, which brings up another tip or idea that a lot of people do is they have a dedicated layer for X referencing. The advantage of that is you can lock that layer or fade it or just manage it more readily by it having its own dedicated layer. So going back to this drawing that we've set up with 4 different external references, let's say you're on a, and this is a good medium size or large size project, perhaps you have a few other people working on the job, and you've assigned someone to do a new building here. The customer requires an outbuilding, a new building at this location, and so they're working off on a separate drawing, and you're ready to see how it ties into the project, pulling it in as an external reference. So let's do that. So I'm going to go and attach that drawing, locate it, and pull it in. And I'm assuming it's all lined up with 0, 0. That's how I instructed my coworker to make sure it all lines up with the main drawing here. And I'll go ahead and insert that. And for some reason it's way out here in space. Now I know it's supposed to be here. So what's going on? So you need to do a little bit of an investigation. So we can open up that drawing directly by selecting the external reference. We get our external reference ribbon, and let's just go ahead and open it. We know that it's not being worked on currently, so we can just get to it straight from here. So the first thing I notice, look at the different appearance of the icon compared to the drawing we're working in. This square, this is a default icon for the world coordinate system. That square indicates that you're in the world coordinate system. However, this drawing, they're in their own user coordinate system, it seems. So I'm going to check the user coordinate system. I know it's supposed to be in world, so I'm going to hit W. And notice how the icon is now cockeyed. So I have to do plan command to get the plan oriented to the new coordinate system, the world coordinate system. So that's the problem. That's what's going on. Perhaps the other user wasn't paying attention to the coordinate system he was in, or he missed that the origin point, the insertion point needs to be lined up. So now I need to fix this drawing by putting it in the proper place. So I've already done that in another drawing. Let me grab that. This is how it should look. Now notice my icon over here isn't following the origin. I'm going to type in icon, or sorry, UCS, and make sure it's set to world. I'm going to save this drawing and go back to my floor plan. Let's fix that situation with the X reference. So I'm going to detach the one that wasn't working. So remember, if I just unload it, it's still going to be in the drawing. I want to completely detach it from the drawing. I also want to see if I gave myself a layer to insert that in. So I am. I'm going to make sure to be on that layer. X reference outbuilding is what I want it on. I'm going to set that current before I hit the wrong button. I'm going to set that current before I insert my X reference. So if I look at my layer panel, I've got the layer set that I want. Now I'm going to activate my X reference palette, attach a drawing, and find that corrected drawing. I should now be able to just insert it directly at 0, 0, and there's the correct drawing. So just a little, this is just to illustrate that some coordination is required if you've got multiple users on the drawing working with X references. You need to agree on preferably using the world coordinate system, but then agree on an insertion point, and then everything's going to pull together much more smoothly. And just a note about Revit, Revit can be introduced in a workflow like this even with 2D drawings only, because Revit can export as a DWG. So perhaps you're working with another office or engineers that are on Revit, you're on AutoCAD. Just make sure that they are using a similar origin point or a project base point that matches your insertion point here. Then in Revit, they go to their layout and export it as a DWG. Let's bring that in as an example too, because I have that as an example. I'm going to just unload this time so I know it's still there. I'm going to insert another X reference, and I'm going to go find the drawing that was provided. So a Revit outbuilding was designed and exported as a DWG. I'm going to pull that in, and there's the Revit drawing as a DWG tying together with our AutoCAD X reference workflow. And then if they keep the same file name, you can just continue to overwrite that file with each update or each change, and your external reference is going to be automatically updated. So what about larger teams or larger projects? How can external referencing help us out there? What if there was a whole nother building to be created here? Sometimes the tendency for a small shop or a one-person shop is to have everything in one drawing. Here, breaking it out into a separate drawing, a separate project even, is a really good strategy. But you may decide to keep the same exact insertion point so you can do a lot of double-checking, collaborating, and external referencing. So let's bring in an example of that. Let's say we know there's a future project, and I'm going to find, or I'm going to attach a new DWG and select this drawing called Future. And that's precisely placed on the site, the exact distance, all aligned because we're using a common coordinate system and a common insertion point. But the same rules of X referencing apply here. Why aren't I seeing the grid here? I want to see the structural grid. So knowing how X reference attach versus overlay works, the person in this drawing must have just overlaid the structural grid because it's not carrying through when I attach it to this drawing. So how can I get my grid to appear in this drawing? Well, I have two choices. I could go ahead and insert it directly as an X reference here, or I could go back and fix this drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and just open this drawing directly, go to X reference, because I see the grid there, and sure enough, it's an overlay type, so it's not going to carry through when I pull it in as a reference into another drawing. And remember, we can change the insertion type directly from this palette by highlighting the X reference. We can come down here, this is a pull down, and you can switch it to attach. Make sure to save the drawing. And I'll go back to the drawing I was working in. And notice that automatic notification that the X reference has been changed, and we can reload it. And then there's the grid available to us. So you can start to see as a project gets larger or more complex and you want to use an X-referencing scheme, there's a lot of setup involved. There's a lot to keep track of, and thus that's when you put your CAD manager hat on. How do you want to name the files? Which reminds me that if you have blocks in the drawing, if you're doing a combination of inserting blocks versus X-referencing drawing files, they can't be of the same name. You can't have a block in the drawing that's the same name as the X-reference. They'll conflict. So you'll want to make sure you use unique naming. You could also use the rename command to change block names, but the same name can exist for an inserted block and an X-referenced drawing file. Another tip that is easy to overlook is because this takes so much work, so much setup, let's say you're ready to start a new drawing. Maybe you even have another phase of the project where there's a connection between these two buildings. So do you have to go to a brand new empty template drawing and start from scratch and pull everything together? Well, one shortcut might be to do a save as, which is the equivalent of just copying this drawing. So I'm going to save this drawing, make sure I got all the changes current. Then I'm going to go to my AutoCAD application button and select Save As. So Save As creates a new drawing. So I'm going to say this is the connection first floor. So it's a simple tip, but we've now got all of these X references still in place. Everything's set up how we had it, but we're in a brand new drawing, and so now we can start working on this portion of the project. So just a little bit of a time saver there as well. Any questions or comments thus far in the chat window?
We have a couple of questions coming in, but do you have more content you'd like to present before we start Q&A?
Sure, I'll show a few more demonstrations and then we'll open it up for a discussion at the end.
Sounds great.
So a couple things to consider is the difference in binding versus inserting when you go to bind an X reference. So say I've got this drawing here that I'm going to send out to the client, but to simplify things, I just want to merge it all together into one drawing. I don't want to send them 12 different drawings that are X references. So I can go to X reference, and I can select all of these, with the exception, I believe, of the images. I'm just going to do the DWGs. So I've selected those, and I'm going to hit bind. So when we bind X references, we're presented with this window, two choices. Do we bind them or do we insert them? Well, what's the difference? And the nomenclature is a little confusing because we're binding and then we have the option to bind. But the choices here are rather simple. When you bind an X reference or X references, it treats the layers uniquely. It separates the layers out from the original drawing. When you insert X references, it attempts to merge layers that are of the same name. So let's go ahead and hit bind and look at the results of this. So I bound all those X references into the drawing using the bind option. So now when I look at the layers, notice what happens. Each layer from the X reference is preceded by the name of the drawing it came from, and then these unusual characters, a $, a 0, a $, and then the name of the layer itself. So and this can get pretty lengthy for some drawing names. And there's repetition too, potentially. So if you have walls in one drawing, a wall layer in one drawing, a wall layer in another, and yet another wall layer and a third drawing, you'll have 3 different wall layers in this bound version. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to go backwards here. And let's try that again. I'm going to go X reference up. I'm just going to close and not save and bring it back up. Type in X reference and let's attempt that again. I'm basically selecting all my drawings minus, I'm hitting the control key while I'm selecting to remove the JPEG images. Then I'm right-clicking over the selection. I'm hitting bind again, and this time I'm going to select the insert option. Let's look at the results through the layer properties. I think my layers are off screen. Let me check that. Yep. So I pull them back onto the screen. Notice that we don't have the same results on the layer names as we did with bind. Everything has the layers were merged whenever there were similar layer names, and none of the layer names have the drawing name preceding it. So it's a much cleaner way. I would think that doing the bind insert option is probably the most useful and best approach in most cases. So that's just a demonstration of the difference between bind versus insert. Of course, you still have the option to use eTransmit. So say you have a drawing that has lots of external references and image files. The command eTransmit just grabs everything up and puts it into one compressed folder for you to ship out. Another topic, we're running out of time to leave some time for Q&A, but another topic I might address very briefly is the concept of master drawings. So I'm going to open another drawing here. I'm going to open what I've named the first floor master drawing. And there's nothing there. And I think that's the point of a master drawing. It's simply a container drawing. It's a host drawing for external references. There's no geometry native to the drawing itself. There's nothing drawn in here. It's simply a host or a master drawing for X references. So when I type in X reference, I already have this set up. I have all these drawings ready to reload. So the advantage of a master drawing is it's just a reference drawing. You can pull everything together into it by using the common insertion point that you've set up between all your X references, and then have one drawing that shows everything. This could then be sent out to consultants, engineers, owners, and you know that everything is set up and organized how it's needed. But another advantage of doing this is that you can interface with other coordinate systems. You could give them a master drawing where you pulled in all the X references and then move them out to where they want to be to work with someone else's coordinate systems. For example, civil drawings, survey drawings are usually drawn at state plane coordinate systems. Really large coordinate systems where the interface may, or I'm sorry, the origin may be hundreds of miles away from the origin point. So the actual site's here, the origin point may be way down here, hundreds of miles away. That's not uncommon. We would never want to model at these coordinates, but we could use a master drawing to bring it in and move it to those coordinates so people can see the results and work with our project at these large coordinates. So I'm going to try and bring those in and reload them. I'm going to save and close. I'll pull that back up to see if that worked. And then we'll take our Q&A session. Maybe I'm thinking of, maybe I have it in a different drawing. Sorry for the delay here. Let's try this one. Yeah, here's the example I was looking for. So here's the master drawing that we were just looking at, but pulled out at those really large coordinates. I know that's really faint. Let me see if I can bring the fading up on that. There we go. So that's an example of the locked layer fading. I had it way down. By cranking it up, you can see that. So that's just a real quick mention of one way to approach master drawings. You can pull everything into a master drawing. You can do several different master drawings to work with different coordinate systems. So with that, looks like we have 5 minutes left, Victoria. Let's go ahead and open it up to Q&A.
We do. Hi, Martin. I'm actually going to run through a couple of closing housekeeping things first, and then we'll jump in and answer a couple of questions. All right? Okay, so we have some additional resources to provide you if you download the PowerPoint here from our Box account. And there they are. There's some blogs and some just helpful resources. Coming attractions, we have 4 sessions out here. Back to basics next week. More modify commands. I believe Volker's going to be joining us for that, but show up and we'll find out. We have no webinar on July 2nd because of the holiday, so may the 4th be with you. Oh, that's clever. You can tell that Volker wrote that. Punny. All right, so following that, Steve Bissett will come back to present 3D modeling, modifying 3D solids. And then July 16th, we've got a surprise in store. Stay tuned for that. You can visit us at autodesk.com/help-webinars to register for the webinar series here. To leave additional feedback, go to this link here, Autodesk with that dot in the middle /AutoCAD webinars. And again, this is our Autodesk Help webinar series. So check out the landing page. Leave your questions after the presentation. The link for the presentation is also available in your email for the webinar reminder, and you can leave feedback on the current webinar. If you have future ideas or suggestions, go ahead and send that to autodesk.help.webinars@autodesk.com. Subject line, build your AutoCAD IQ. So now back to more Q&A. Let me turn that back. Oh, actually, wait. I have one more poll to run before we answer a couple of questions. And I'm going to launch that poll. Can you see it? There we go. Did you learn something new today? I want to know if we taught you anything. And it is looking like overwhelmingly yes. You did learn some new tips and tricks about X references from Martin. A couple more seconds on that one, and then we'll close it out. Okay, and there's the results for you. All right, Martin, you ready to open this up for some Q&A?
Yes, I think we're going to stop the recording at this point, and
you can leave it. You can leave it going.
Okay. We also have our we also have our expert elite with us, Nauman. So please feel free to jump in on some of these questions too as well.
Okay. We do have 1 minute left, so let's take let's take one question, and maybe we'll have a time for a second one. But we do want to give you back to your day job there. So how about, is it better to use full path or relative path for XREFs?
Nauman, do you have a response on that one?
A full path versus a relative path. I think relative. I prefer to use relative, is just because if you transfer a drawing from one consultant to another, send a drawing from one consultant to another, then it doesn't remember all the J colon backslash, all the map stuff, or if you use UNC pathing. If you do full path, it doesn't remember all that. Instead, it just goes to a relative system, so it'll use the dot backslash. That's what the kind of the old Unix system is. So that's what they use. I prefer relative more over full pathing.
Yes, me too. I think relative pathing is usually the way to go. Makes it easier to move your files and move your project, and the X references still are able to be found.
All right. So we are a little over here. I am going to stop the recording now.